Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Camera Tuesday, we're going to talk about Canon EOS R5 Mark II. So let's dive deep into it. So this EOS R5 Mark II, well, basically this is a workhorse camera for Canon shooters. Be mindful, Canon 5D was also a very big deal. It was a very successful lineup. It was expensive, but it was more of like this is a big heavy duty stuff that you buy and you chill. So that was very successful. However, when they upgraded from DSLR to mirrorless, the R5 Mark 1, basically the EOS R5, that was the first mirrorless R5 variant, it was not good. Let's just be very clear about it. It claimed too much, delivered too little from Canon's own point of view. It was like, Canon, the people were like, dude, what? So that created an issue. So this time they had to fix the reputation. So to turbocharge the reputation, they're like, okay, 45 megapixel, exactly the same as the last one. Good. Now they have actually fixed it. Now it's stacked PSI sensor. Be mindful, right now the only limiting factor of digital photography is the fact that it has rolling shutter. The only way to fix it is to have global shutter or have rolling shutter that is so fast that does not make a difference. While higher megapixel generally leads to slower readout, the only way to bypass that is having stacked sensors. Stacked simply means there are far more parallel analog to digital converter channels, so all of them can act parallelly and data is read out, dumped quickly. Or you can go into what Sony did. It's just like global shutter, shut up, take money. So that's there. Their data is stacked. Now they have to upgrade the new battery. Now the LPE6P is a completely new battery. Now you're like, wait a minute, LPE6, there is a good chance you may already have this. What's the difference? Well, here's the deal. They have changed the chemistry completely. And now this puppy can support up to 6 amps of continuous draw, not peak power, continuous draw. That translates to roughly 40 to 44 watts of power. And what does that mean? That simply means all your old batteries, they will work. Basically LPE6 series battery will work, but do not expect most of the advanced feature to work or like ROS to work, because again the drain on the battery would not be sustained. That's if you have original Canon batteries, so you have to buy new batteries. Now I do not know whether it's like a genuine issue or is it more like, what if we can exploit some more money. But I have a feeling it may be bit of both. I have a feeling like that. It does have a proper overheating issue that has been addressed, because be mindful, R5 was like 8K, raw. Everybody's like, whoa. The moment they used it, this is garbage, because still what they had was a insulator design. Now awesome thing about insulator is that it does not get affected by outside temperature. Now that means if you take your properly cool normal ambient temperature 25 degrees Celsius camera to a hot addict where it is like 45 degrees Celsius and you are shooting your camera is like, bro, I'm good, I've got this. Now then why don't we use insulator design? Yeah, insulator design has this issue that once the heat inside builds up, you can't dump it. Meaning once those cameras were overheating, they reach that point, let's say after 30 minutes, you cannot do anything to it. Like there is nothing. Like people actually put ice packs, it did not do anything. You can put in a fridge, it will still take time to cool down. That insulator works both way. And the most embarrassing thing for Canon would be that DIY Perks Canon 5D modification video. All he did is opened it up and he's like, hey, there is a suspiciously large amount of empty space here. Like almost like I'm pretty sure some engineer actually intended to put a freaking copper dump there. He put a block of copper. Let that be very clear. Just a block of copper. No fins, no heaters, just a block of copper in the empty space that was already there. Put it all back together. No overheating. No overheating. They're like, how the heck that's possible? Well, think it this way. Temperature itself is not just one variable. It's the amount of heat. The amount of heat inside a camera is very little. It's just the temperature is very high. Why? It's almost acting like a soldering iron, meaning the amount of heat generating component, they are too close to each other. Like if you have seen into any computer CPUs, they are huge. But the actual silicon, that's a very tiny die. That's what we call a die. So that is very tiny. If you can dissipate that heat to a larger area, now it's not an issue. That's how the heat sinks work. So Canon scenario, because there was nothing immediately dumping the heat from SoC to the surroundings, it was cooking itself. So having that giant metal body, it was like, I got this. Now it dissipates that, dumps the heat into the chassis slowly radiates it away, everything is fine, everything is dandy. That was such a poor design decision. And be mindful, he did not had any holes, nothing. From outside, I can give you the camera, you will not know that it's a modified unless you can precisely tell 5 or 6 grams of metal. So this time they're like, yeah, that's a bit embarrassing, let's not do it again. So they have proper heat-seeking systems built into it. with some fancy graphite and all that. And this has a dual card slot. Again, it's a professional system, so CFast type B and UHS 2 card slot. And what they have done, you have to understand, these companies are not a SoC company. Like when you look into mobile company, let's say Samsung is a SoC company. They make Exynos. You look into, let's say, Snapdragon. What do? They make SoC every year. So these companies like Nikon, Canon, and Sony, they suck at making SoC. So what they do, they generally work for years. A small team inside them work for years. They make a SoC and then they milk it for few next years. So DigiCax, which you are pretty sure you know that it has already been used. So how can you improve that DigiCax processor? You can't. It's already built. It's already sorted. So what they can do nowadays to improve on a pre-existing system is add a co-processor. Sony also did that, where Binox X system, they had dual SoC design. They're already using it. It's already in multiple cameras. How can you improve it? Well, you put another AI co-chip that improves the performance. Now, I am really surprised that GoPro did not do that, and that's why GoPro reputation tanked so much. They made one good SoC for that day. It was like awesome. One iteration, super awesome. Two iteration, okay, it's slowing its age. Third iteration, now it's crashing. Fourth iteration, sixth iteration, seventh, is like people are like, okay, let's give up. So not getting trapped into that scenario, they are putting this Digic accelerator. So that accelerator is basically acting as an input buffer, meaning the sensor, based on how the design is. So I'm pretty sure the sensor feeds data into the data, it sorts everything out, and the Digic Assist does what it does best, meaning taking that sorted file and be like, okay, here's a frame of video, save it. Here's a frame of file, save it. So these two are working in tandem, exactly like Sony has like a AI buffering chip for autofocus improvement. They have the same acceleration chip for autofocus improvement. So every improvement that is on fundamentally, whoa, how the heck they did this sort of improvement, that's coming from that accelerator chip. So this is what they have done, the eye tracking and all that. Again, it also reduces load. If this puppy can handle majority of the new types of load, that old processor can be like, this is a new way I'm seeing companies sorting it. I'm just waiting that some company just grow up and it's like, okay, let's just buy freaking Snapdragon processor. It could do all of this without ever heating up and less of the power, although it will be expensive. So what about the stills? Now, stills has much improved rolling shutter. That's the first thing you will notice, especially if you do bird photography, action photography, sports photography. If you do this sort of thing, you can tell side by side, yeah, they are different. So that's the first big improvement. Another is it has now predictive autofocus. Be mindful, autofocus at this point in time, Canon and Sony, they are so good that you do not have to worry about it, especially on the high-end one, latest ones. And even Nikon has finally catched up. So at this point in time, we do not have to worry about autofocus. So how can you differentiate? So Sony did the same thing. Basically, they had dual system. It's like, hey, what if we have AI pose detector? So the camera sensor sees it, AI processor reads it. It's like, so this is the skeleton. It draws the skeleton, predicts it, and then voila, you have really good predictor. So even if a person is running, the AI can auto lock it simply because it knows where it would be within reasonable accuracy. So take that concept, turbocharge it. Now I have 3D analysis, and now teach that AI algorithm how the heck some sports work, like football, volleyball, and other sports. 3 sports are there total, and again, because they are not Indian, they do not have cricket. This would have blown up if they had touched cricket. Good way, but they did not do cricket. So it predicts how the heck things are going to, so it can pre-focus effectively, meaning be mindful, these things are happening at least 100 times a second. So having that sort of predictive capability reduces the workload on lens motors, because again, that's a physical thing. It has to take time to move. So if it knows already, okay, I have to focus, let's say in this vector, it's like, okay, start moving before it is done. The moment it happened, I was ready. So that's a very good jump. So at this point in time, we have crossed the threshold, like in 2020s, we have crossed the threshold where autofocus is an issue, unless you are dealing with some low grade SoC with Nikon systems, which again, they have improved with Z6 Mark III. Everything else is like sorted, unless you are talking about Panasonic. Panasonic still needs some time to cook, but we are sorted. So this is just added butter on top. Up to you. Again, would it make a wow difference? On paper it is, but in real life it's like not that fast. And be mindful, it's not 120 FPS where it would have been like, whoa, that Sony has. And be mindful, Sony has global shutter, so they can like really amp it up. The optical quality does suffer of the global shutter, but everything else is like, I get this. I'm trying to get this. 30 fps at 14-bit raw. Be mindful, many cameras, even Canon's own cameras, have 30 fps on electronic shutter, but most of the time they will give you compressed raw or low bitrate raw, meaning 10-bit raw or 12-bit raw. There they give you full size 14-bit raw, no compromise on e-shutter. The mechanical shutter only goes to 15, which is normal. Be mindful, it's a physical thing going kachang kachang, so there is an upper limit to it. And it has pre-continuous shooting. Now this function is already there in many cameras nowadays, especially Canons only, but having full raw buffering, it does require a bigger cache, because be mindful, if you try to cycle that much raw file through the SD card or through the CFast type card, it will wear it down quickly. And yes, SD memory, like physical flash memory as we call it, physically has a electron gate, push electron back and forth, it can only do it for a few million times. Do it like hundreds of times per second, yeah, that will pile up very quickly. So doing that on cache memory, which is RAM, so it's much more long-term sustainable option. So it's a clever thing. And what does pre-shooting mean? Meaning you see a bird trying to do a dive, you're like, okay, I got this. You frame it, you focus it, and you half press the shutter. You wait for it to go on the water. Now the moment it happens, there is a lag. Why there is a lag? Well, again, unless you are acting at light speed, you have to wait for that incident to happen, that photons to reach your brain to process it, then brain to send the signal to your muscle to like, okay, now press it. It will not be half second, it will be 1/20th of a second or 1/300th of a second, but it will be there. But if you have a buffer of half a second, the pre-buffer will have the right moment, just right moment. So for many scenarios, like batsman, footballer, goalkeeper, in those sort of scenarios, it's like shut up, take money. So this is a really good system. And another improvement, which is subtle, which is like now they have turbocharged the IS. So IBUS and IS is two different things. In-body image stabilization also has a rotation component to it, because again, it's an image sensor. You can't rotate a lens. It does not make a difference. So it only has X and Y, while sensor have X and Y plus rotation and tilt axis. So that's why you will always hear like lens has 2 axes of stabilization, while IBUS has 5 axes. That's the reason for that. Now both of them working together, making love to each other, that was the selling point of Panasonic. You will always hear people talk about like how the heck Panasonic image stabilization was so good with some lenses, because they were both making love together, like on a whole different level. Meaning you can handheld telephoto. You can be handheld. Like basically what does handheld mean? Meaning you have a telephoto, you're not trying to do like this. You do your best to be like, okay, let me try to, and then the micro shakes and jitters that happen, especially at telephoto end, the lens is like, I got this. Sensor behind it is like, I also got this. So they both work together, and you can get 8.5 stops of basically performance improvement. That is significant. Meaning if you're trying to be stable, the camera is like, I got this. Meaning you do not have to worry about it. Although be mindful, IS is no longer very common in all lenses. Like in DSLR era, there was no other issue. There was no other option. So all lenses had that. But in mirrorless, there is surprisingly few lenses that have in-body image stabilization, lens stabilization. So be mindful, that sort of wow performance you will only get if you have the lens that works with it. Now, be mindful whenever you have talking about something like this, where you're going big giant buffer system, you will have a lot of photos that do not make that much sense, because again, they will be out of focus. How would you pre-sort it? Because again, if you were just going on it, outcome would be too much hassle on the post-production. So they have an automatic tagging system where it figures out blur and out of focus images and puts a tag, so you can sort it out directly when you dump the file into your computer. So it's a pre-sorting. It helps you reduce it, and you do not have to delete it. You can just pre-sort it, figure it out. Then once you are like done with main work, then you're like, okay, let me just have a manual look at it. You may have some like artistic photo. You're like, hey, let's keep it. So this is a good helping situation, because be mindful, now modern cameras have far more features and very bad usability. So this sort of thing is really good for usability. AI-based deep image noise reduction. Now, why image noise reduction working on a camera would be better compared to your computer? Computer has to have a generalistic AI, whereas like, give me whatever you can give me, let me process it. When you're talking about camera, it has real-time data. What does that mean? That simply means when the photo was taken, whenever you see the pixel size, the photo site as they call it, there is some photo sites that are reserved for just noise detail, meaning those photo sites, they do take photo, but that they are generally covered by a black mask. The reason is that data that is generated is thermal data, meaning what is the temperature of the sensor that creates a noise pattern. That noise pattern goes into the normal algorithm, and using that camera applies a normal noise reduction. When you give that data to AI, while AI also have the ability to understand, hey, this is a sky, I can smooth it out far more compared to a brick wall. Brick wall, if you smooth it out, it will look like a crayon painting. So it knows brick wall, let's not apply too much polishing to it. It's a sky, let's polish the hell out of it. Now the image looks good. If you have a real-time camera data and all the EXIF data is there, it can really shine. So that's a really good system. Now it also has an upscaler, which is 100% useless, but again, if you find a use, go for it. But this as a noise reduction on camera has some genuine advantage, because you cannot just apply a bulk noise reduction. If you can just isolate things, it would be really good. So having an AI there and having the raw camera data would be priceless, which it has. This is really good. The EVF is also boosted. It has, I do love DP reviews guys, because they have fixed this problem where it's like 5.76 million. It means nothing. Give me the pixel density. That is 1600 by 1200, means around a 2K-ish. So it's good, it's good, it's good. So I really hate that, like, million dot. Tell me in resolution, then you can compare it to a smartphone, and then you will be angry at all camera companies. But for blackout free, which again nowadays is blackout free is like duh. But like I still remember like 15 years ago when it was like, whoa, especially when Micro Four Third came in the first place, like, whoa, this can do blackout free, whoa. So stills is really good. What about video? Now this was the main pain point, because they overpromised in terms of video in the early model, but they could not deliver. This time they have fixed it. So now it has a proper waveform monitor, meaning not only you have just a histogram that is, while it's good for stills, it's not really desirable for videos, because again, video have movement, motion, things of that nature. You need a waveform. Again, videographers are like, that's how I can expose it properly, and that's how cinema does it properly. So having that in this sort of system is shut up, take money. Then it has full-size HDMI. Thank you. I really hate all camera companies that put micro, especially Canon, simply because Canon had huge camera body, and they're like, what if we create more e-waste? It's like we have 10,000 planets to ruin. It's like more e-waste. Yeah. So I'm very happy, full HDMI, and it has telelight. Again, that is a tiny thing, but it is short up, take money for many people. And it has fan grip. Be mindful, the fan grip is 40,000 rupees. It's painfully expensive. But again, if you're happy with this camera and you want this camera to be as a reliable video camera, you have to buy this. The reason is it has an intake in the bottom and exhaust at the side, and if you have a forced airflow, it can work for much longer, much more reliably. And be mindful, this is a normal thing. This is the only way where you can have video camera working properly, or unless you have a giant handycam where body is like properly synced. Be very mindful. The reason why R5 was struggling, not because like it was designed improperly. Here they have like actual aluminum heatsink. On their website they have like giant X-ray vision of that, like, this is aluminum heatsink. I'm like, yeah, bonded to freaking magnesium chassis. Now it will be far more better. You again, heat energy, the total wattage there is very little. The battery maximum has 15 watts of power. So 15 watt dissipating on the whole chassis would be very little. It's just that, like, what if we don't dissipate it? Is like, you have to. So this time they are doing it. So what about that graphite? Graphite is basically, you have a frame structure that is aluminum, that is the main heatsink, and then you have graphite pads or like a ribbon, so to say, that is connecting the SoC to the aluminum, and then sensor to the aluminum, and CFast card, because again those cards do heat up a lot, so you have to conduct that heat away also. And then you have a vent system. Now the vent is passive, which again I find odd. It's like you are almost there. In your own C series you have the same design with, again, it's a bit bigger, big gear, but you have a fan there, and you're like, okay, a fan would require, like, violating the waterproofness. You can have waterproof fans. BLDC motor allows you to have the electronic part inside the chamber and the propeller or impeller outside of it. That's how all PC water cooling parts work. Like, the motor is completely isolated from the water flow. The water is completely enclosed. Now, like impeller, how the heck it's rotating? Have you heard of magnetic field? It can go through plastic. So you can have a rotating spindle staff there without touching anything else. So that would have been a very easy way. So I do not expect that waterproofing to be an issue. This more looks like a cost cutting, because simply because you almost had exact same thing in C series cameras. So now, what does this mean? This simply means with 4K in indoor environment, you should not have any issue if you have the fan system. And what about without fan? Again, depends on the temperature. Be mindful, we are from India, so our indoor temperature could be a bit hotter to like 35 degrees Celsius if there is no air conditioning. If it's a ground floor, then the temperature is not that bad, but still could be hot, so it will overheat without fan. And in 25 degrees Celsius European temperatures, they are like, yeah, 4K, all formats, anything below 4K, below 8K, so to say, you do not have to think about it. If you have fan, 4K 24/7. If you touch 8K, even with fan, it has upper limit. So again, giving all the data and all that, it does have some penalty. Why the penalty? Look at the data rate. 8K YOLO RAW, like the true RAW, that gives you around 2600 megabits per second. That's a lot of data. You want to figure out megabytes divided by 8. That's a lot. That's so large that if you have a hard drive, it cannot work. Like hard drive will not work if you try to edit on it. You have to have a SSD to edit, and that only goes to 30 fps. Now I think that's the upper limit of the SoC. So if you want to go to 60 fps, at that point in time, it's like, hey, it's gonna do raw light. So I think that's the bandwidth cap. I think there's 300 to 400 megabytes per second is the bandwidth cap of the SoC. I think it cannot do faster than that, because the CFast card, that goes to 1500 megabytes per second. It's like, bro, I'm good. The card is like, bro, I'm good. So the card is not the weak link. I'm pretty sure the SoC is. So that's why the raw standard is not at 60 Mbps. So that's there. And you can go up to, like, all the formats are available. You have 60 FPS, you have 29.97 FPS, 25 FPS, 24.00 FPS, or like truly calibrated 39.98 frame per second. That's also there. So, and they have learned from the fact that cropping the hell out of it, which again, I was this close to buying Canon EOS RP. Again, my battery is the same, my lens would be the same. I was like this close to buying it, but did not, because again, at 4K it cropped so much that it was smaller than micro four third camera. Yes, a full frame Canon EOS RP, when you go to 4K video recording, it crops that much. So they're like, hey, what if we don't crop it? Now you're like, okay, what if we do line skipping or pixel skipping? That's good, but it does throw away the pixel size, right? So what if you don't do it? The SoC with that accelerator chip allows downscaling. So not only you can have the full readout of 45 megapixel, you downscale it, then you give a thick file, that is SRAW file at 1816 megabits. Benefit, your hard drive does not explode and your file size is less. And again, be mindful, if your master file is at 4K, there is not that much benefit of having a 8K, because again, that introduces extra step where you take the 8K file, store it, then convert it into a smaller 4K. It's like, might as well let the camera do it, because again, that's extra step, not necessary or desirable in many scenarios. So having that downscale, down-raising system happening on the camera, it's far more preferable for majority of people. Again, in terms of quality, it's a bit degraded option, but again, better than line skipping. So it has downscaling options, it has flexibility. And they've also realized the fact that many people may only have APS-C lenses, or some video lenses are APS-C only. So they may be like, hey, what if you mount that APS-C lens? We can do crop, then we can do the crop. I'm like, thank you, that's smart. So aluminum heatsink, 4K, you should not have an issue. And this also does proxy recording, which again, Sony and Panasonic have been doing for a long time. They are doing now 2K proxy, which is almost like full HD, bit bigger top and bottom. And that goes into your SD card. So now you can do proxy to your video editor and raw file to your colorist. Both can work parallelly. That's how movies are edited. So that's a good thing. Video also gets a pre-release, meaning if you are tracking a video, you do not need to, like, launch the video file. You can just like half press it. It cycles the RAM and it's like, something interesting happened. It has 3 to 5 second pre-buffer. So as long as focus was already locked, framing was already done, you will be sorted. That's really good. It can also do 4 channel of audio with a hot shoe mount. Unfortunately, it's not Panasonic, so it does not have 32-bit. That's the only genuine thing missing. That's like jumping from JPEG to RAW in audio. If you go from 24-bit to 32-bit float, it solves all the problem in audio wise. It's just like Panasonic is the one that figured it out to add it into their micro four third in full frame. I'm pretty sure they will add it next time, but no major company has done that. It's like, what if we had stuck in 1980s, So that's there. But again, I'm happy with this design, although I'm not happy that they do not have the fan, because that almost feels like the engineers from C series were like, hey, we can tell you how to do it. Broadcom is like, no, nobody will buy C series, even though we are not already selling it at lot. So it's one of those things. But I'm happy. This gives me hope. And again, be mindful. Please be mindful of the fan cost. You have to buy it. If you want to reliably shoot it for video, you have to buy it. So this is a very good progress. I'm very happy with this, simply because this shows that Canon is not unaffected by things are happening. If I'm not mistaken, the current event, the biggest Trump event that happened, I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about, the pew pew that happened and the projectile that was captured in frame, that was a Sony camera. And if I'm not with that photo was also Sony. I am not sure that one, I could not get the XF data, but I'm pretty sure it looks like a Sony camera. So if that is Sony camera, yeah, Sony is like sorted. That simply means enough Sonys are selling at high enough rate that Canon is getting affected. Because for Canon, there was a point where Canon was like, what if we F the customer? Like Canons were removing features that my ancient camera has. Like my Canon 800D DSLR has more features than many of the EOS R series camera. That should not be possible. But Canon was like, what if we remove the feature? So customer has spoken. Customer is like, okay, what if I, instead of paying you, what if I go to other company that is giving me more features? So they did that, and that's why we need competition. Never ever I want a scenario where only Sony gets everything. I want a scenario where some people are happy with Sony, some people are happy with Canon, some people are happy with Nikon, some people are happy with Panasonic. So that will keep everybody in check. That's a desirable thing. If you want a good, healthy ecosystem of camera cost that you people can afford, you need this. And again, there was a time where Canon was the daddy, because again, they jumped into video very early on, and Nikon was just trolling. They jumped into drive-by-wire lens system very early on, and that paid off exponentially. And voila, sooner and later, every lens was Canon lenses. Outcome was Nikon market share dropped, Canon video share went up, and Canon was like, what if we F the customer? Thankfully, Sony came in, and they had somebody with wisdom. It's like, what if E-mount was open? So again, we will not give all the features, but E-mount was open. And benefit is Tascam flooded the market with new lenses. Tascam, why I'm saying Tascam? Tamron and all other companies started to flood the market with quality lens. Then people started to buy, and then it's like, hey, it's actually not selling. Because be mindful, this whole idea of in-body RAW video recording, full HDMI, cooling vents, this is not new to Canon. Canon has made this C-series camera long ago. And you're like, hey, it looks like a fat RF camera, so to say. It is. It's just a camera that is fatter. It has a cooling vent. It's same thing. Dicto R5. Take R5, amplify it. That's what they have. They always had this as a solution. Where it's like, oh, why does our camera overheat even if it can require like, $5 of copper to make it thermal proof? It's like, no, buy this camera. They always had that option. It's like, why do you have this limit? Buy this camera. Enough people must have switched away from it that it is affecting Canon. That Canon is fixing it. That, like, I'm really happy about this full size HDMI. Finally, because I hate Canon because it went from mini HDMI, which again, not great as full HDMI, but much better than micro. They went from mini, instead of full, they jumped to micro. And they have giant camera bodies and tiny ports. What if it breaks? Wouldn't it be awesome if you can more e-waste, hurt people more? So this really shows good tradition where Canon is moving in the right direction, where it's like exact air vent, but in this air vent is like from side to side. Here it's bottom to side. So I'm really happy that Canon really taking this approach rather than, oh, it's a photo camera, it can't do videos. Like, why are you advertising it? It's like, this time it's like, no, we are advertising it, it can actually do it. Not the 8K part. 8K is like, I think, without Peltier modules and having giant heat sinks and lot of energy to burn for the cooling part. Yeah, I know it sounds ironic, but that's the reason. Red cameras and REs both can generally eat through 100 watt-hour battery in 1 hour. So this is really good. And why it has happened? Because Panasonic and Nikon have stepped up. Panasonic, again, I really want to bitch slap the product managers. Like, they should have launched the full frame with face detect autofocus. If they had done that, they would have really shaken up the market. It's like that first initial wastage that they did for 2 to 3 years. Not 3 years, I think 4 or 5 years they have waited for, oh, face detect. It's like, you have to do it. They did it. And again, the recent S5 Mark II variant is really good. And again, if this company starts to sell a lot, I could see Canon finally be like, okay, we get it. CFast Type B is awesome and all, but it's still expensive. Just SSD recording would be 10 times cheaper, like Panasonic does. I would be happy. So Panasonic doing really good system. Nikon doing really good system, because Nikon is the only camera company that I can say in big three that can give you in RAW before this happened, that you can reliably use. So that was really good. So I'm very happy. We are very happy. And now the only lagging company now is Sony. It's a good thing to be, which guarantees that unless A7 Mark V is already built, there is a good chance that A7 Mark V will have some extra boosted features. And this is a good thing. That simply means all of us will get a better choice. This is good. This is what we should encourage. We never want a company where this company equals all. You never want an NVIDIA. You always want to have multiple players. Only then the cost remains reasonable. So this was my presentation on basically Canon EOS R5 Mark II. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike. Press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.